Welcome to the 51st episode of Dialogika, a podcast between two friends about the latest in politics, society, and feminism in Indonesia and the world. I'm Swedian Lee, and my co-host Stephanie is out this week, and also, as you'll hear in our podcast, has nothing to contribute to this week's episode, which is, surprise, surprise, about the World Cup. I'm going to be talking to a great friend of ours and a former guest of the podcast, Kerri Na Basaria, who's a almost lifelong football fan and certainly one of my closest friends who I can talk football about for hours and hours on end. We'll be talking about the upcoming semifinals between France and Belgium, as well as England and Croatia. We're recording this before those two matches, so we have no idea who's going to be in the final. And yeah, we'll talk about the politics of football, the politics of the World Cup, and, maybe our predictions at the end will come true if England don't mess it up. Just a fair warning, there is some strong language in this episode because, hey, it's football. We'll be talking shit all day. So, without further ado, here's to it. On this episode, we have our great friend and former guest of the podcast, Kerri Na Basaria, who's actually in Russia right now, in St. Petersburg. What are you doing there, Kerri?
I'm catching the semifinals tonight, and then another semifinal tomorrow evening.
So yeah, for our listeners, we're recording on Monday night, or Tuesday morning Indonesia time, which means we don't know who's going to be in the final yet, but by the time this episode goes live...
It's true. Exactly. So you have to take all our predictions and just with a grain of salt, I think.
Yeah, we might be completely off. Who knows? But that's why we love the World Cup. I'm really excited to talk to you about the World Cup. You know I love football. I know you love football. In particular, the World Cup is just so, especially this year's, it's just so crazy, so unpredictable.
Yeah, it's really weird because, everyone was vouching for Germany to go
I know.
beyond 2 seconds of their of their run, which is so weird because they ended up at the bottom of their group, which is, oh my god.
And that's not even the biggest upset, right? Like, that was just one of the many upsets that happened in this.
Exactly. It's just massive.
But before we dig right into the World Cup, Kerri, can you talk a little bit about how your personal history and relationship with football in general, the club you support, the country you support during these 4-year events?
Okay, so I started watching football religiously in 2006 during the Champions League final between Barcelona and Arsenal. Our mutual good friend Ryan is an Arsenal fan, and he said, oh my god, we need all the support that we can, so watch the game and see, Arsenal for the first time. And I did. And they were wearing those ghastly yellow jerseys that they had, but okay.
Throwback. But they were good.
Yeah, I know, throwback when, O2 was still their sponsors.
Yep.
So I watched it, and obviously, predictably, well, not predictably, but Arsenal lost, obviously, as we all know, because they never won the Champions League. For some reason, their team really, resonated. So I started following them next season, obviously, and just never looked back, really. And at the time, Thierry Henry was still playing, but then the next season, it was all fiasco because he was leaving and stuff. So, so I never really got to see him at his very peak. But, started learning more about Arsenal and their history and their invincible history. Sorry, not invisible history. They're invisible right now, but...
I thought that was just like a great Freudian slip right there.
But, so that's a whole other podcast, I think, about Premier League. Yeah. In terms of country, I've always liked France, actually. I don't really support them religiously, but I did in the 2006 World Cup. Really liked them, and especially over that whole controversy between Zidane and Materazzi.
Yeah.
That was history right there.
Oh, wow. Marco Materazzi gets crushed by Zidane.
It was a final in the most French and Italian way, I think.
That is true, actually.
And,
I never thought of it that way, but it is so true.
Yeah, I mean, Materazzi is a piece of shit if he really did say all that crap to Zidane, but at the end of the day, it's really sad because I would have liked to see Zidane, which is one of the greatest players that you had the pleasure of witnessing, I think, even through the TV screen, win another World Cup, obviously, because he won in '98. But yeah.
It's funny when you mentioned France versus Italy in the 2006 World Cup. I personally am a Liverpool fan, which,
we all know, and we all regrettably understand.
Hey. We've had our days, and, I don't know if you actually know this, but guess what my first team was before Liverpool? I supported this team for a year before Liverpool.
Let's see. You're Asian, so probably United.
Okay, how is it even possible? I kill myself first. No, ironically, I supported Chelsea.
Oh, of course you did. I remember that. Because Chelsea had just been bought by Abramovich, around our time, right?
Yeah.
And they resurrected into this, world-class team when before they were just pretty much a second-rate London team, behind Arsenal, even Spurs.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, Chelsea was a second-tier team, I only liked it because they had Gianfranco Zola, who I think was a beautiful player.
He was a good player.
And that actually, because of him, I fell in love with Italy as the country that I support. Which is ironic because in '06 I was totally on Zidane's side because Materazzi, as you said, is a shithole. And a part of me is a little bit sad that this year they're not in it, but also deservedly so. They need to get their act together before they can even participate in anything again.
Yeah, you mean they need to start getting fresh blood and not dinosaurs from That's the thing with Italian team. I find Italian football actually really boring because I haven't actually maybe really sat down and get to know the way that they play.
When we were growing up in our teens, that was probably Italian football at its best. You've got Kaká, you've got Pirlo.
It's so weird because a lot of Indonesians back then was super, heavily into the Milan clubs and Juventus.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first memory of football, was that a lot of Indonesians follow Italian football because they see it as the ultimate beautiful game where it's played.
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw that sort of gradually dissipate and disappear as we start following of football, and we see English Premier League kind of overtaking that, which is a shame because I think they've produced very fine players and really good clubs, and great clubs
and the great club culture, right? That's part of how I learned fandom at its truest form, also in its ugliest form. But there's something about being a fan.
Just regarding Lazio and their fascist
their ultras
overtones. Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny how much football has changed since we grew up, and I feel like you're one of the few friends I have who still follows it pretty religiously. There's something about watching football and following your club you support, following the country you support. It's not so much just about the game itself, right? There's something about the event that speaks to different levels of existence. I mean, maybe I'm just too much in love with the sport and what it means, but I think...
No, absolutely not. I think there's a lot to be said for a sport that is constant, that is, it's cliche to say, it's, the world game or whatever, but it is true.
It is true.
It is everyone's sport. Wherever you go in the world, even the US, it is heavily played and heavily followed. Mm-hmm. And there's not as much of a cultural phenomenon with other sports, I think.
Like we've said already, this World Cup being played in Russia, having Russia perform so well in this World Cup as well has sort of like, it's made it a little bit more political than most World Cups, and most World Cups are already very political.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you can see with Brazil, like, I thought Brazil was very political, and I didn't think it would be because sometimes I think when you were a kid, you realize it was just a party, and then as you grew up, you realize that hosting these kinds of events must have taken some toll on different people, different kinds of people. And one of the most sort of issue that you see is the displacement of a lot of indigenous people in Brazil. So that was a big thing. And then you see it like, throwing this big party obviously means there's someone getting the shit end of the stick. And it's always at the expense of someone. And you see it with Brazil, and you see this mostly indigenous and mostly, obviously, poor communities who are pushed out to clean up the streets. This is what happened in South Africa as well, to be fair. When I went to Cape Town, it was super clean, and in a way, I feel like they're trying to portray this image of South Africa, or Africa even in general, that is not all huts and sticks that people think about, And obviously that's down to people and their horribly racist misconceptions, but I think they were really trying to play into that, okay, we're not just this, like, we're not just animals and savanna kind of thing. But you can definitely see, when I was in South Africa, you can definitely see that there's no character in it. It feels like everyone's been pushed out, and you don't really see a lot of South Africans really anywhere. And when you do, in a way, they kind of have this. When I do talk to some South Africans, and a lot of them are mostly white South Africans that I talk to, they, in a way, have this sort of script on what to say, to foreigners or like tourists who come to watch the World Cup. So. Yeah, it was really bizarre, but at the time I didn't really think much of it. I mean, I heard here and there, but, I was still a stupid 19-year-old, and I wasn't really thinking much in the political implications of hosting such a big tournament for the country. But we all heard it, like everyone who's hosted these kind of events, that, they are always saying that it's going to bring a lot of tourism, it's going to bring a lot of investment and stuff, but at the end of the day, when the party stops, you've got all these debts, you've got all these stadiums to maintain or not maintain, which you see in a lot of cases, and that's it. It's kind of like, okay, it's like hurrah for a couple of months, and then you're kind of faced with this big, issue that was caused thanks to this event or hosting this event.
I think, not to be too much of a Debbie Downer about the World Cup, but it's also oftentimes, right, like, certain countries, in an effort to portray themselves as open, as welcoming, they might instill policies. Like, I think we see it in this year's World Cup in Russia, where the government's attitude towards people is more open and more welcoming, but it feels like it's only during the World Cup. Is it all going to shut back down?
It's fake. Just put it that way. It's fake. It's like the 2008 Olympic in Beijing, right?
Yeah.
Where they had this whole dossier to the people to be like, okay, don't do all these things that are definitely what you do. At least don't do it in front of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, of course, trying to portray the best versions of themselves. That's what happens. I mean, countries these days, in this like modern political setting, it's in a way it's trying to market themselves, because you can't use hard power anymore, right? I mean, war is kind of out of season. It's it's faux pas. War is faux pas. So you've got all these like different ways to exert soft power, and one of it is when you host these kinds of events and you can portray yourself in a sense that, oh, okay, you don't know us, like, come to our country and see how friendly we are, or in terms of Russia, see how not racist we are, or see how not homophobic we are, whatever. And it's really funny because you kind of see all these politicians and also just the organizers of the event trying to rush themselves into being in line with the whole world and their perception. And it feels sort of like, okay, this is all fabricated. When we leave, it's still going to be the same.
I mean, there's always the hope that it will change for the better after people leave, after the media and the cameras leave. But there too many World Cups have happened where that wasn't the case.
Yeah, if not the majority.
It's kind of weird that we're like downers about it because we know the history and the politics.
Okay, guys, the World Cup is awesome. It's
Yes.
great to watch it. At the end of the day, it's a party. Okay?
It happens
And
once every 4 years, and it's worth it.
it happens every 4 years. It's worth it. But here you go. If you like football, follow a team in a league. It happens every year, every day, every month.
Mm-hmm.
With some controversies, but not like global controversies like the World Cup, you know. And if you do decide to follow a team, you better make sure you follow the Premier League and follow a team called Arsenal. Okay, cool.
You got your plug in there, all right.
I got my plug in there.
I do think, part of us growing up is acknowledging that when you appreciate the World Cup, you gotta appreciate it for all the good it brings. And there is a lot of good. There's a lot of joy in 2018 because of the World Cup right now. But there's also, recognizing the facade, recognizing the marketing campaign that happens that is part of this whole package, and sort of like being more, for the lack of a better word, woke about the situation is, I think, important.
And you have to. You have to. I think if you want to be, I don't want to say this, but like, if you want to be a responsible football fan, I think you have to know, I think you have to acknowledge the good and bad.
Yeah.
And especially with the World Cup, where it involves, a whole nation, and they're put in a spotlight. I think you can't just discount it and just be like, okay, whatever, that doesn't concern me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a football fan. I'm just watching it for the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it is, because it's not just a game. It's people's lives, and it's culture, and it's so much more than that. And everyone is always saying, oh, it's not just a game. So what makes it just a game now?
And it's fascinating, right? I'm one of those people who read about football analysis that goes beyond the game, like economic implications of it, the social implications of it. And when countries like Mexico beating Germany, beating the current world champions, that creates such an impact in Mexico itself that's not something you can neglect when this year they've got the presidential elections.
Exactly.
I know we're only talking about 90 minutes plus extra time of a game, but the impact goes beyond the 90 minutes.
It is. What is that celebration that the two Albanian Swiss players, they did
the double eagle.
Yeah, they did the double eagle to, I guess, as their own message of, Kosovan independence and Kosovan sovereignty.
Yeah, against the
Serbia.
Serbs. Yep.
That's not just a game. That's their personal and political statement to a team that they feel represent, oppression to their people.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also one, I think Croatia did chant something that was used by a Croatian group that allied with Nazi Germany or something.
Oh,
I don't
that's
remember.
bad.
But yeah, they did that. So, come on, look at all these examples. I'm pretty sure there's more than this.
I mean, the far-right party in Germany, Alternative for Germany, wanted to put all the blame on the German teams going out on Mesut Ozil and İlkay Gündoğan because they're ethnic Turks. Because they're non-German, quote-unquote. So it's I think, it's befitting for, responsible football fans to recognize the bigger scheme of this, because other people from both sides of the extremist aisle are also seeing the opportunity to talk about what they want to talk about using football as a lens, and just being aware that when people talk about football to further their message, it could be a dangerous scenario, right? It's not just, it's all fun and games. It's all just in the spirit of competition. Oh no, there's a lot more to it. I love that we can just so easily talk about the social political impact of football. But let's talk about the real meat of it, which is, who do you think will win the two semifinals?
Really? We've already talked about the social and political implications, and we were just saying that's the real meat, and you want to go back to the game. No, okay. I've already told you that I really, really want an England versus France final, because the history nerd in me is like, what Henry VIII nonsense is this? Okay, let's relive the 100 Years' War.
Yep.
Just see if there's still some hatred between them, okay? And I just want to watch that. I just want to see a France versus England one, mainly because, I like France as a team, and I haven't really seen them in finals, obviously, since 2006. And England, so they can shut up about 1966.
They'll never shut up.
Yeah, they'll never shut up because, they always feel like it's their God-given right to win the World Cup every 4 years because they invented the game. It's coming home, and all that crap. But I think the English team has been really fantastic to see, actually. I've kind of fallen in love with them a little bit. They're great.
I followed the English team on a cursory basis because, you've got Jordan Henderson, the Liverpool captain, playing in there. So I kind of was like, you know what, I'll follow it a little bit, but I never really put my hopes on because it's England, they're perennial underachievers.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But I think I really fell in love with them when they won in penalties against Colombia. Where it's just like, you broke the curse. You broke it. And it was just...
I think getting sort of a completely new team where you're not really relying a lot on superstars like, Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard back then. And I don't know, I feel like they're a lot more cohesive as a team. And just really nice to see. And just to see this, because obviously their faces are all so young and new, and I don't know them. And, I knew England team to be relying on Lampard and Gerrard. These were the times where a lot of these star players were really just getting older. And, David Beckham retired and stuff, and everyone's like, oh my God, what are we going to do?
Nobody can cross anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And to see them sort of like revive in this way, in a really positive way, it's really good. And also Dele Alli, totally love him.
I, like you, also would love to see an England versus France match. There's the England side, which is like they've never really achieved what they want to say they can achieve. And I feel like in a way it's the same for France. They always have great players, but they never gel. And then by the time they gel, they're like out. Or, or there's the injustice of Materazzi. It's like...
Or some racist Italian prick took it away from them.
Exactly. It's like there's always something tragically French that happens to them to stop them. So it's like, they're at this point where they're like, they kind of resemble a team now. They have really great players. And at the end of the day, I still want good football to win. I don't want the team that tried the best. I still want some level of competence. And both the French team and the England team has competence. And it's exciting to see who wins. I will say, though, this year's World Cup has been amazing because I do think the 4 semifinalists have deserved to go to be at this point, so And I think even though I'm rooting for England versus France for the final, I think Belgium has done really well. I think Croatia has done really well. And if either of them win the World Cup, they've never won it before.
Yeah, exactly. No, I would be happy if any of those 4 won the World Cup, to be fair.
Yeah.
I think they truly deserved it. So this is for the first time I'm just like, I don't really care who really... Obviously, personally, I want France and England because I live for the drama.
Yes, the drama will be amazing.
But even if it's Belgium and Croatia, I would just be as happy.
I really want England to win. I think this is as good as a chance as they're going to get. And
that's actually true.
And it's also like, if it's not this most humble of England teams, then they're just going to be even more braggadocious about it, and it's going to be even more annoying.
Yeah, but imagine them winning the World Cup. It's going to be annoying too.
We're going to be listening to Gary Lineker talk about it for ages and ages and ages, but that's the price you pay.
Someone shut him up, please. Oh, God. All right. Well, thank you for having me talk in this World Cup special. Because God knows Stephanie can't do it.
It's really funny. I proposed this idea to Steph, and then she was like, I have literally nothing to contribute. You go do it yourself. I'm like, all right, I'll take that.
She knows nothing about sports. She's the type of person who's like, is the sports on today? Is the ball game on? She is like the most non-sporty person I've ever met. She just doesn't. She just thinks care. This world doesn't exist. It's really funny. She sees the news, just not the sports section or the headline or anything.
Or anything, or even the memes. Nothing.
Yeah, it's really funny. I feel like World Cup has been a lot funner in the social media age a little bit.
Yes.
Because you get to see so many different reactions, and you're just like, oh, yeah. Back then, it was just the news and your neighbor.
Yeah, like the moment kind of lives on forever, much longer, It's like, there's something special about it. For all its faults, there's something special about seeing the World Cup in today's age.
Yeah, but I don't know. I have lost that magic of being a little kid supporting the team and not thinking about Russia potentially paying off FIFA to get this host.
Potential. I mean, that's basically how.
Potentially? Definitely.
Definitely.
Or Qatar.
Yep. Or America.
The next 2 World Cup. I'm just, yeah.
Cool. On that very positive note about the future of the World Cup. Thank you so much, Kerri.
No worries. Anytime.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find more information and resources of whatever we talked about on our website, dialogika.id.
Music credits to John Dealey, Lee Roosevelt, and of course, Broke for Free.
If you like what you hear and want to support us, please review our podcast on the Apple Podcast app or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. And please share our podcast with your friends. It's the best way to spread the word about Dialogika.
If you want to get more involved, we'd love to hear from you. Our email is dialogikapodcast@gmail.com, or just shoot us a message on our Facebook page.
You can also find us on Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud, and now Twitter. Please follow us on these various platforms. Our Twitter handle is @DialogikaPod. Also, follow me on Twitter. It's StephTank. That's STEPHTANGK.
Thank you again, and see you guys next time.
Bye!